Today we'll take a look at this device here. This is the Luxury and Precision P6Pro. This is a R2R digital audio player, DAP, or called DAP, and it is one of the highest end, at least in the market today, for portable device. This is about 5,000 Sing dollars or about 3,900 USD, and depending where you get, prices may vary a little bit, but it is a very, very expensive device. And the best thing about this device, at least to me, is that for a flagship, it is a very small flagship device. And to just show you in comparison, this is with the Cayin N30Ultra, one of the smallest Cayin. And if you just compare it to the other R2R from AK, you can see that the AK is significantly taller, at least 1/cm taller, and it's also wider by about a cm. So that is something notable. This is a very small device, and well, if you are looking for a small device, I think this is one of the interesting ones. Now, this P6Pro is only meant to play audio. There is no streaming services, no internet serving capability, just Bluetooth and some basic ability to play music itself. The OS, based on what I've seen here, is not an Android OS. It is definitely some custom OS that they built themselves just to play music, which is fine. I mean, the purpose is to play music. I mean, some of them can surf net today, but I don't think you will buy this for doing it. You can just use your handphone for it. So the important part is, does it sound good? Now, I won't be talking about usability and stuff because that is more of a day-to-day usage. Today is just purely the first look. And let's not waste time. Let's do a little bit of listening. I'll be using the U12T to listen, and we'll see how it goes. After that, I'll compare with some devices and then give you guys some understanding of this device, especially considering that this is 2024. I mean, this device has been out for some time. So I've heard this device, for first impression wise, well, it sounds like a good DAP. Doesn't sound anything wrong. The only difference maybe is the soundstage is slightly bigger when using the U12T. U12T soundstage normally just goes into the ear. This one goes beyond the ear a little bit. And then the overall sound itself feels very balanced. Don't seem to have any noticeable emphasis. It doesn't feel very slow nor very fast either. And the bass wise, I think the bass there feels like there's a slightly more bass texture. But other than that, I really can't tell. I mean, it sounds good. Really sounds good. So, well, this is a very expensive device, so sounding good is not enough. So first, I want to compare it with another device of the similar size, and that is the Cayin N3. Now, obviously, you can buy 5 of these Cayin for one of these LMP. Or in fact, wait, let me think. You can buy 6 of these Cayin for one of this LMP. So let's compare it solid state to solid state and see what's the difference. So I have heard the LMP versus the Cayin here, and 6 times the price difference, of course. Using my U12T, there is quite a bit of difference. I just want to go through them when it comes to sound quality. Firstly, I think when it comes to aggressiveness of sound, I feel like the Cayin feels a bit more aggressive. That is definitely true. The whole sound feels a little bit more aggressive sounding, a bit more energetic, right? And aggressive, not the smooth style. While the LMP is definitely less aggressive and also smoother. The overall tonality and texture is a bit smoother there. This also brings us on to the next one, which is the bass itself. The bass is aggressive sounding, which means it's slam, slam, slam on the Cayin. While on the LMP is a bit more, I would say, as feels like a little bit, a touch more accurate. But then again, this is subjective, right? It slams and it decays a little bit more natural, at least to me, on the LMP than the Cayin. The Cayin feels very slammy and impactful. But when it comes to that feeling of slamming down the drum and then the whole sound after that for the decay, I think the Cayin doesn't feel as natural as the LMP. Now, for the mids, definitely the Cayin is more aggressive sounding, more powerful, and a little bit more body than the LMP itself. When it comes to the highs, I feel that they are about the same. Details-wise, it really depends on which part of the track. If the track has a lot of mids, then I would say as the LMP is more detailed. But when the tracks have not that much mids, I find that they are about the same. The LMP do have a few notable advantage. Firstly, I think the overall smoothness is definitely there. And then the soundstage is wider. It is noticeably wider. Things are outside the ear while Cayin is inside the ear. And then the vocals are a little bit more dispersed, therefore less energy, but a bit more smoother sounding. And I would say it's more relaxing sounding, you know, and also aggressive and upfront. And then in terms of tonality, I find that the Cayin, when you compare it this way, Cayin feels a little bit warmer, and the LMP feels a touch brighter. But this one is really, really minor there. Then overall, I think when it comes to general sound quality, responsiveness, everything, I feel they are about the same. I personally like bigger sound, so LMP is definitely the better sound for me than the Cayin. But that being said, the Cayin just now was purely on solid state mode. Tube mode, especially for modern, does tame it somewhat, but you know, that is not the purpose of this comparison, solid state versus solid state for this round. Next, I'll compare with my SE300 here. Now, comparing to both of these devices, I think that the LMP is a better sound. Let me explain a few things first. Firstly, I think when it comes to the overall feeling of the music, I feel like the SE300 feels a bit more sluggish sounding. Like literally, it feels like slower. Then when it comes to bass, I think the LMP is also tighter than the SE300. Where the SE300 is quite different is that there's this slight thickness in sound. LMP do not have that thickness in sound. It still feels a bit more neutral balance and, you know, a bit airy still. And when it comes to soundstage, I think the soundstage is very much closer than versus say the Cayin. This is very close. I would say as the SE300 is still a touch smaller than the LMP P6Pro. Now the P6Pro is also, I think, more detailed than the SE300. SE300 feels like less detailed. I think maybe it's due to the thickness of the sound, just less detailed there, less airy also compared to the P6Pro. The P6Pro just feels a bit more airy there. And also when it comes to vocals, I think the SE300 is a bit more upfront. The LMP 6 Pro is a bit more chill and behind, slightly more chill and behind. Which is a better sound? I think the LMP feels a bit more technically better, but if you like the thick slurpy sound, then I think the SE300 will be more thick and slurpy there, which adds a lot of nice value if you're listening to certain female vocals, where you want that warmer, smoother sound. But I do like the airy sound because mainly the genre of music I listen, I prefer the airy sound, and I think the LMP is a better genre for me, considering the better bass, overall slightly better clarity, a bigger soundstage and airier sound, and still relatively smooth. So like just now, the Cayin was a bit aggressive, but both of these are considered as smooth sound, just that the P6 Pro is a nice balance between overly smooth, like say the SE300, versus smooth enough and smoother than most other DAPs that is running like standard chips. Okay, that is with the SE300. Now, I will take one more DAP in and then we'll do a final comparison. After that, I will try out with headphones. I mean, you're going to pay so much money, you have to try with something else, right? One moment. So when versus the M9 Plus, there is also some difference here. Actually, in fact, quite a big difference. Firstly, I think the M9 Plus have more body, very similar to what I get in Cayin. But the difference is that the sound itself is still smooth and still relatively big sound. The soundstage between both of them are still, I would say, to the advantage of the LMP P6 Pro. The P6 Pro is still a slightly bigger sound, but very minor, not as obvious as say the Cayin. But that being said, the mids wise, the clarity of the sound, I think the M9 Plus is very clear, just a bit warmer and a bit more body there. And while the LMP is a bit more lighter sound, a bit bigger in sound, and also I think the way they separate things are also quite different. I mean, LMP feels a bit more layered, where the vocals stand out from the rest of the mix. While for the M9 Plus, the vocals do feel like it blends into the bass and the lower mids and stuff. You know, that's the thing. Feels like a bit more pressed together for the music, while LMP feels a bit more separated. Just that feeling there. Right. How I notice is that there's a part where there's bass and then there's some lower instruments that are being played. I feel like the LMP really like highlights the vocals over all of those instruments, while the M9 Plus kind of like mix them all together. But does it mean that the LMP is more detailed? I think is a slightly more detailed in that case when there's multiple of such instrument mixing with the vocals. But I think it's very, very minor there. The other thing I did notice is also the bass. The M9 Plus bass feels a bit more rounded off, while the LMP bass feels a bit more cleaner, especially when it comes to impact. The amount of bass feels about the same, but the texture of the bass and the impact of the bass, I think the P6Pro is a touch better. But that being said, if you are looking for a slightly warmer and full-bodied sound, I think the M9 Plus gives you that warmer and full-bodied sound itself without any compromises to any part of the other frequencies, especially when you put it next to the P6 Pro. While the P6 Pro has that slight advantage in the slightly bigger sound, slightly more layered sound, and also, as I said, the edge of the bass and the impact of the bass feels slightly more precise on the P6 Pro versus the M9 Plus. Of course, all this is done with my U12T. So for the sound summary using IEMs on the P6 Pro, I just feel that firstly, the soundstage is definitely a win here. It is bigger sounding. Secondly, it's also more layered, where things are a little bit more separated, especially the vocals feel like it stands out from the mix a bit better. And next, for the bass itself, I think it's a nice balance. It's not as aggressive as, say, the N30Ultra, but not as, I'll say, as relaxed and a bit sloppy, if you ask me, in the SE300. So this is, I feel, a better bass than the M9 Plus because it's somewhere in between. There's good amount of cleanliness and impact while still relatively sounding natural, unlike the N30Ultra, which was a bit too aggressive for the bass part of things. Where I think is a deciding factor is really whether do you want a more full-bodied focus mids, which is almost in every other depths, or you want a more dispersed, relaxed, but still very clean and clear mids on the P6 Pro. At least for IEMs, I think this is a very, very good device. However, I won't say that this is outright the better device. I think you may like the M9 Plus Ultra because if you want a more powerful, more energetic mids that is still smooth, the M9 Plus gives you that. I mean, compared to, of course, the Cayin N30Ultra, then it is different, right? The N30Ultra was a little bit more aggressive sounding overall compared to the P6 Pro, and it is also smaller in sound from both the soundstage angle and also the vocal angle. It is a smaller, more focused sound. So, I mean, there are differences, right? So the M9 Plus versus this, I will say that it's a preference, while the N30Ultra versus this, I'll say it's whether you want a more aggressive sound or more relaxed sound and bigger sound. And then when it comes to the SE300, well, SE300 represents a more, I guess, traditional leather depth sound, where it's a bit more thicker, a bit more slower sounding also, smoother, while this one feels a bit more modernized. It sits in the right, I guess, in between of everything, yet still maintaining a very big sound. And people who like big sound, I think this is the best choice. That being said, let's try with headphones because this is an expensive DAP and I don't think you just want to use it driving only IEMs. So let's try with headphones. Now, which is a better sound? Wow, this is tough. When I drive the Caldara close, I have a slight, I mean, if it comes to my preference, I will actually slightly prefer the M9 Plus because it feels more balanced when using the Caldara close with it versus the P6 Pro. The P6 Pro seems to like emphasize a bit on the natures of the Caldara that I don't quite as like, which is mainly, that sibilance part of thing and even enhancing the treble slightly kind of thing. Not really my cup of tea there. I do enjoy the slightly bigger soundstage still, and overall the slightly dispersed sound for the mids. I don't like it too focused, for at least that's my taste. But the M9 Plus gives that extra body, which I think the Caldara close needs it. So on the U12T side, I do prefer the P6 Pro over anything else. But on the Caldara close side, I do prefer the M9 Plus. Now, this really piqued my interest, so I will go and get my HE1000 and do a final comparison before I end this very long first take. Now, utilizing the HE1000 Unveiled here, and for this one, I prefer the P6 Pro. The P6 Pro just feels a touch more detailed, a touch bigger sounding, and I feel like the mids are just a touch more smooth and accurate. While I think the M9 Plus gives it a little bit more power, a little bit more body, but it doesn't feel as natural, especially when there was a part where there's this guitar that is being dragged out. I think that one really, I think the P6 Pro sounds more natural. And then when it comes to the vocals also, I think it feels a little bit bigger, and it surrounds me a little bit more. While this one feels more focused, more mid-centric, but it just doesn't feel as airy and as natural sounding as I want it or I envisage it to be. So at least for this particular track and this particular headphone, I think that the P6 Pro is better. So in summary, this device is interesting. I think in terms of sound quality, some notable ones that is consistent throughout is always the bigger sound, the bigger sound stage, the slightly better separation, and even in details wise, I think it's one of the more detailed, DAPs, even though it is a R2R. And surprisingly, it has a less bodied sound, technically slightly smoother and airier sound compared to the other DAPs. So these are the sound signature that I think is notable here, and you may just want to buy it purely for those sound signatures itself, because it's unique. I think it's unique compared to all the devices I have. Every other device sounds actually a touch more body than it. I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, right? Then when it comes to the air of the sound, of course, it's a bit more airy too compared to the other players. When it comes to the control, I think it is one of the better ones. And I do think that in terms of details, it's also one of the better ones that I compared just now. Definitely, I think it is the best, or if not on par with the best among all four of them. Definitely the SE300 is the last place. While it's a comparison between this and M9 Plus, and I think this is actually slightly more detailed than M9 Plus, in terms of detailed comparison. And when it comes to the bass, I think the bass control on this is the best, but the amount of bass is not the best. So I do think that there's a mixed bag there for the bass itself. Now, the interesting part is, of course, using the earphones and headphones. On the U12T, I think this is the nicest one. On the Unveiled, I think this is nicer than the M9 Plus, but when the Caldara close comes in, I do think that the M9 Plus sounds better for the Caldara close. So it's not like a sure win all the time. In fact, it's not even the best sounding, because if you are the type that prefer a bit more body to the sound, I think this technically instantly loses. If you are the type that do not want so much air and a bit more focus in the sound, this also doesn't win it. It straight away loses. So I don't think that this is outright a better DAP, but I think it's giving something different from any other DAP I heard so far. So if you like that bigger sound, I think it's an auto win here. I mean, this is the biggest sounding DAP, regardless of device. That is the truth. Whether you like the rest of the signature or not, I think it depends on you. And that's really about it. This is the first look of the P6 Pro. I think personally, it fits my requirements. I love the bigger sound, and I'm willing to pay for that bigger sound most of the time. But I don't think this is for everyone, and I really cannot recommend it for everyone, especially considering the price of 5,000 plus Sing dollars, or about 3,900 USD. This is expensive as heck. If the only difference, and the only, I'll say, as good and obvious difference is sound stage, maybe separation too. But everything else, it really depends on you. So I do not know. I really do not know whether this is like the best thing ever, And that's really about it. This is the first look of the P6 Pro. Once again, thanks to Jaben for providing me this copy here to do a first look. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.